Hey, and welcome back to Totally Accurate. Today, I've got a chilling Skyrim story for you, all about the Dawnguard, those legendary vampire hunters. But this isn't your typical undead hunt. Imagine stepping into the boots of one of their own, wandering the snow-covered forests of Skyrim where every shadow could be your last, and the line between hunter and hunted starts to blur. We're diving deep into ancient crypts, dark rituals, betrayal from within, and a war that threatens to tear the Dawnguard apart from the inside. There's a mysterious girl caught in the middle. She might be the key to stopping the curse, or the very thing that brings everything crashing down. So buckle up, because this isn't just a story about vampires. It's about trust, survival, and the heavy cost of hunting monsters when the darkness might be closer than you think. Let's dive in. Snow doesn't whisper in Skyrim. It screams. The wind came down from the Velothi Mountains like a wolf with frozen breath, tearing at my hood, needling my face until it burned raw. The road beneath my boots was gone, buried in drifts. I had been walking since dawn, but the world never brightened, just shades of gray swallowing other shades of gray. I wasn't alone on that road. I never am, not anymore. Somewhere behind me, something followed. I could hear it when the wind died for half a heartbeat, a wet step, a faint scrape of claws. It never came closer, never fell behind. Just lingered. 3 days earlier, I had found the remains. Travelers from Riften heading west, 2 men, a woman, slumped against a broken cart. No gold missing. No signs of a fight. Just 3 pale corpses with their throats open wide and their eyes frozen in the kind of fear you don't get from bandits. That was why I left the city. They were my neighbors once. By the time I reached the foothills, the snow was flecked with black feathers. A raven lay on its back in the drift, wings stiff, eyes missing. Not eaten. Plucked clean. Something about it felt deliberate, as if placed for me to find. The wind shifted, and the scent hit me, iron and rot. I spun, hand on my sword hilt, but the road was empty. Only the blizzard moved. It wasn't until I saw the canyon mouth that I knew I was close. The rock walls rose like jaws, and between them, I caught a flicker of firelight. That was Dayspring Canyon, the home of the Dawnguard. And if they wouldn't take me in, I'd be back on that road before the next night fell, alone with whatever had been shadowing me since Whiterun. The canyon swallowed the wind as soon as I stepped inside. The walls rose higher than any city gate I'd ever seen, slick with ice, their tops lost in the low clouds. The path wound downward, and I followed the sound of running water until it gave way to something sharper, thock, thock, thock. The rhythm of crossbow bolts biting into wood. A voice broke through the stillness. "Stop there!" He stepped out from behind a boulder, a giant of a man in leather and steel, crossbow already aimed at my chest. His beard was black and flecked with frost, and his eyes scanned me like a hawk weighing whether I was prey. "I'm looking for the Dawnguard," I said. "You found them. Now answer me this." His tone was more command than question. "You ever drunk blood? Ever felt the sun burn your skin worse than fire?" "No," I said. "But I've seen what does that to people." That seemed to satisfy him. He lowered the crossbow, but only slightly. "Isrin will decide if you're worth the trouble. Follow me. Don't touch anything." The path opened into a wide hollow where sunlight spilled between the cliff walls, lighting a makeshift camp. Wooden palisades stood half-built, targets riddled with bolts leaned against the canyon's sides. Men and women moved with purpose, oiling gear, sharpening blades, loading crossbows. That's when I saw him. Isrin. He stood on a raised platform like a sentinel carved from the mountain itself, his arms crossed over a chest broad enough to block the sun. His eyes locked on me the moment I entered. "You think you can hunt vampires?" he asked, his voice carrying like a war horn. "I can try," I said. "Try." He stepped closer, and I caught the glint of silver stakes on his belt. "Out there, try gets you turned or gutted. We don't need more corpses to bury." "Then don't bury me," I said. His stare held for a long, breathless moment before he spoke again. "We'll see." Seelan, take our guest on the Broken Fang job. If they live, they stay. Somewhere deep in the canyon, I thought I heard that same wet step I'd heard on the road. Seelan met me at the camp's edge, tightening the strap on his gauntlet. He was broad-shouldered, with a Nord's easy grin and the kind of scars you only get from surviving something that should have killed you. Ever used a crossbow? He asked, handing me one that felt heavier than a war axe. No, I said. You'll learn fast. Vampires don't wait for you to find your footing. We set off before noon, heading west through the rift's tangled pines. The sky stayed low and gray, and the snow muffled everything except the crunch of our boots. Seelan was talkative at first, stories of hunts gone wrong, of bolts bouncing harmlessly off a vampire's armor, of comrades drained in seconds. But after the first hour, even he fell silent. It was the smell. That same mix of iron and rot I'd caught on the road. Stronger now. When the sun began to dip, we reached Broken Fang Cave. The entrance was a jagged wound in the rock, and the snow around it was churned with footprints, human and something else. Long, narrow prints like talons. Inside, the air was thick and damp. A faint dripping echoed somewhere in the dark. I loaded a bolt, my hands slick with sweat despite the cold. Seelan's torch threw wild shadows across the walls, and each time the light shifted, I thought I saw something move just beyond it. The first one came from above, a pale shape dropping from the ceiling, fangs bared. Seelan's bolt took it in the chest before it landed, sending it thrashing on the stone until it crumbled into ash. The rest came in a rush, two more from the shadows, claws flashing. I fired, the recoil jarring my arm, and one went down. The other slammed into me, its breath rancid, eyes black as tar. I managed to jam the crossbow between us, buying enough space for Seelan to split its skull. When the noise died, we found the coffins, 6 of them. 5 empty. 1 occupied. Inside was a girl, bound in silver chains, no older than 17. She hissed weakly, eyes wild with hunger. She's turned, Seelan said, loading another bolt. We end it now. Wait, I said, stepping between him and the coffin. She's still alive. We can bring her back. His frown deepened. That's not what we do. In the shadows beyond the torchlight, something shifted. Watching. Listening. Seelan's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the crossbow stock. She's a fledgling, he said. That means she's already killed or will the moment she gets loose. She's chained, I replied. Silvered manacles. Somebody put her here for a reason. He took a step forward, and the torchlight caught on the girl's face. She was pale, but not corpse pale. Her cheeks still had the faintest blush, as if the blood in her veins hadn't yet gone cold. Her lips were cracked, her breath shallow. Please, she rasped. The words sounded like it hurt. I didn't choose this. Seelan's jaw worked. I could see the war behind his eyes, duty against mercy. Finally, he let out a long, annoyed sigh. Fine. But if she so much as twitches the wrong way, I'll put a bolt in her heart before you can blink. We freed her from the coffin but left the shackles. I took her arm, light as a bundle of sticks, and we made for the cave mouth. The whole way, her eyes darted toward the dark corners, as if she knew something else was still inside. And something was. Halfway to the exit, I heard it again, that wet step, slow and deliberate. The torchlight didn't reach far enough to see, but the air shifted, heavy with the scent of old blood. We didn't speak until we reached the open snow. The girl flinched at the sight of the sky, clutching her shackled wrists to her chest. Seelan watched her like a wolf watches a trapped rabbit. We made camp in the pines. Seelan took first watch, his crossbow never leaving his lap. I lay on my bedroll, staring at the flicker of the fire, listening to the girl's shallow breathing. At some point, she turned toward me. They'll come for me, she whispered. Who? I asked. Her eyes shone in the firelight, bright, almost fevered. The one who made me. He can smell me anywhere. Behind us, somewhere deep in the forest, a branch snapped. Seelan's head whipped toward the sound, and his hand found the trigger. The fire popped. The girl closed her eyes. And for the first time since I'd joined the Dawnguard, I wished I'd stayed on the road. Dayspring Canyon was different when we came back. The sun was still high, but shadows clung to the rock walls like they didn't want to leave. The sentries at the gate didn't greet us, just stared as we passed, eyes darting between me and the girl in chains. Isrin was waiting on the platform. His gaze went straight to her, hard and unblinking. "Why is she still breathing?" "She hasn't killed," I said. "She says she was turned against her will." Isrin's laugh was humorless. "And you believed her?" Seelan stepped forward, his voice steady but tight. "If she's lying, we'll know soon enough. But she's bound in silver. She can't hurt anyone here." "That's what you think," Isrin said, his eyes never leaving mine. "We've lost people because someone thought they could save a vampire." He looked at two nearby hunters. "Lock her in the lower cells. And double the guard." They took her away, her bare feet whispering against the stone floor. She didn't resist, but her head turned just before she disappeared through the archway, her eyes locking on mine, wide and pleading. That night, the canyon didn't feel like a fortress. The wind carried strange sounds, soft scraping on stone, the faint echo of whispers you couldn't quite make out. In the barracks, a few hunters spoke in low voices about the smell, near the cells, about feeling watched when no one was there. I went to check on her. The lower cells were damp, the air stale. She sat in the far corner, knees drawn up, chains clinking softly as she moved. "He's close," she murmured without looking at me. Before I could ask who, a shout rang from outside, urgent, sharp. Footsteps thundered overhead. I ran back into the night air. Seelan was already at the gate, crossbow in hand. "Something's moving in the trees," he said, his voice low. "Too big for a wolf." In the torchlight, the snow beyond the canyon mouth looked empty. But then, between the pines, I saw them. Two red pinpricks, low to the ground, swaying slightly, watching us. The canyon gates groaned as they swung open. Seelan moved first, crossbow raised, his breath fogging in short bursts. I followed, every step crunching in the snow, sounding too loud, too final. Behind us, the gates shut with a thud that echoed into the trees. The night was clear, but the moon was a thin, cold sliver. The snow reflected just enough light to see the shapes of the pines around us, all black limbs and hunched shoulders. Somewhere out there, those red eyes had vanished, leaving only the sound of the wind. We moved slow, scanning every shadow. "Too quiet," Seelan muttered. I wanted to agree, but my throat felt tight. The deeper we went, the heavier the air became, like the forest was holding its breath. Then came the smell. Not the fresh tang of blood, but something older, thicker. Rot layered over rot. Seelan held up a hand. I froze. At first, I thought it was a rock ahead of us, half buried in snow. But then it moved, unfolding upward into something pale and wrong. The figure was gaunt, its skin stretched tight over its bones, its jaw unhinging wider than it should. No sound came from its mouth, just a faint tremor in the air, like the hum of an insect's wings. Seelan fired. The bolt hit square in its chest, and the thing stumbled but didn't fall. It turned those eyes on me, red and wet, and I felt something cold press into my skull, like fingers pushing into my thoughts. I pulled the trigger. The bolt struck its throat, and this time it dropped, thrashing in the snow until it dissolved into ash. But the forest wasn't empty. Shapes moved in the pines, 3, maybe 4, all watching. "They're not attacking," I whispered. "They will," Seelan said, loading another bolt. That's when I heard it. A voice in my head, not mine, not Seelan's. Low, like a whisper through stone. "Bring her to me." The fledgling's face flashed in my mind. And then the shapes in the trees vanished, as if they'd melted into the night. We followed the trail of ash deeper into the forest until the pines thinned, opening onto a small hamlet I didn't recognize from any map. It should have been quiet, only a few snow-buried roofs, no smoke from the chimneys, But the stillness was wrong. We stepped into the main lane, our boots sinking into drifts, and that's when I saw it. Blood. Not splattered, but brushed across the snow in wide arcs, like someone had dragged a paint-soaked broom through it. The red trailed between houses, under doors, around corners. Seelan caught my sleeve and nodded toward the nearest home. The door hung open, swinging slightly. We entered. The inside was lit only by the moonlight spilling through cracks in the shutters. Furniture overturned, dishes shattered across the floor, and in the far corner, a shape slumped against the wall. A man, or what had been a man. His skin was the same pale gray as the ash left behind after a kill, his throat torn open, his chest hollow where ribs showed. His eyes still moved. "Help me," he mouthed, but no sound came. Seelan raised his crossbow. I grabbed his arm. "He's still." The thing exploded upward with a speed that wasn't human. Seelan fired point blank, the bolt ripping through its skull, and it collapsed into dust. Outside, a scream cut through the air, high, sharp, then abruptly silenced. We bolted toward it, skidding around the side of a house. A woman lay face down in the snow, crimson pooling beneath her. Over her crouched a vampire, its mouth buried in her neck, shoulders rising and falling with greedy pulls. It didn't notice us until Seelan's bolt took it in the spine. It spun, shrieking, and I put another through its chest. The scream turned to a wet hiss before it dissolved into ash. We stood panting in the snow, scanning the dark. The hamlet was silent again. Too silent. That's when Seelan swore. I followed his gaze. At the far end of the lane, half hidden by drifting snow, stood a tall, thin figure in a black cloak. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared. And even from that distance, I knew exactly who it was. The cloaked figure didn't run. It simply turned and drifted into the treeline, its movements so smooth it might as well have been gliding over the snow. Seelan and I gave chase, bolts ready, our breath loud in the cold air. The trail led us to a stone stair half buried in frost. Each step was carved with runes so worn they looked like cracks. The stairs descended into a darkness that swallowed the moonlight in the space of 3 steps. We lit torches. The air that rushed out was heavy and wet, like the breath of something long sealed away. The stair opened into a vast underground hall, the walls lined with alcoves, each holding what looked like stone coffins, dozens of them. But the coffins weren't sealed. Their lids leaned against the walls, open and waiting. In the center of the hall stood a slab of black stone, etched with symbols I didn't recognize. Seelan ran a hand over them, his fingers tracing the grooves. "Old," he muttered. "Older than any crypt I've seen." From deeper in the darkness came the faintest sound, a slow, deliberate drip of water, or something thicker. We followed it, passing through a low arch into another chamber. Here, the coffins were not stone but carved wood, each one draped in rotting cloth. One near the far wall was open, the interior lined with fresh straw. And sitting on that straw, staring at us with eyes like burning coals, was the cloaked figure. It rose, the cloak falling away to reveal a man, if you could call him that, tall, with skin pale as candle wax and hair white as snow. His smile was thin and cold. "You have her," he said. His voice was soft, but it filled the chamber as though the stone carried it to every corner. I didn't ask how he knew. My torch flickered, and for a moment, it felt like the walls were leaning in. "You'll bring her to me," he continued, stepping forward with slow, precise movements. "Or I'll come for her myself, and take the rest of your little keep while I'm there." The torchlight caught on his teeth, and I realized his fangs were longer than any I'd seen. Not a fledgling. Not even an ordinary vampire. Something older. Seelan lifted his crossbow. "You're not getting anywhere near Dayspring." The pale man's smile widened. "You've already brought me close." The torches died. Darkness swallowed us whole. When the torches flared back to life, the figure was gone. But the air still thrummed with a cold so sharp it felt like ice needles on my skin. "We have to get out," I said, voice barely steady. "Now." Seelan nodded, But as we turned, the sound of metal scraping echoed from the shadows behind us. "Isrin!" I shouted. "Someone's inside the crypt!" The echo came from everywhere and nowhere, mocking us as we scrambled up the steps. When we burst into the open air, Dayspring was ablaze, fires licking the sky, thick smoke choking the stars. The gate was under siege. Shadows moved like liquid across the walls, and the stench of death hung heavy. Hunters fought desperately, but it was clear the attackers weren't just vampires. They were something more cunning. Amid the chaos, I spotted Seelan fighting side by side with a man I'd never seen before, a hunter who moved too smoothly, too quickly. His eyes gleamed red in the firelight. "Seelan, wait!" I called, but he didn't hear. The stranger's smile was cruel as he plunged a dagger into Seelan's side. Seelan's cry was short and raw as he collapsed into the snow. I barely had time to react before the stranger turned to me, voice silky. "You brought her to us," he said. "And now so do you." I staggered back, heart pounding. The newly revealed vampire hunter, turned traitor, was grinning, fangs flashing. The crypt had been a trap, and the girl was bait. The Dawnguard were being torn apart from the inside. Flames roared, swallowing Dayspring whole as screams tore through the night. The gates had been breached, and what was left of the Dawnguard scattered like ghosts in the snow. I grabbed Seelan's arm, dragging him away from the blood-soaked ground. His breath was ragged, his skin pale beneath the darkening wounds. "We have to get out," I urged. He shook his head, eyes burning with pain and anger. "No. We hold the line." But the line was shattered. Hunters I'd trained beside were either ash on the wind or shadows themselves, turned. The traitor's words echoed, "You brought her to us, and now so do you." In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the girl, no longer chained, her eyes glowing faintly red as she moved with unnatural grace through the fight. Was she a pawn? Or something else? We fled into the forest, leaving the burning ruins behind. The cold was biting, but it was nothing compared to the chill settling in my bones. As dawn crept over the mountains, a harsh reality settled on us. This was no longer just a hunt. It was a war, and the enemy wore the faces of friends. We made camp deep in the woods, shadows stretching long beneath the dying embers of a hastily built fire. Seelan lay against a fallen log, pale and silent. I sat across from him, crossbow resting uselessly in my lap, eyes scanning the dark tree line like I expected death to crawl from between the branches at any moment. "The Dawnguard is broken," I said quietly. Seelan's voice was low but steady. "Not broken yet. Just fractured." Fractured was right. The survivors were scattered, distrust carving deeper than any vampire's fangs ever could. Every face carried the weight of suspicion. Every whispered conversation stopped when I approached. Isrin was gone, vanished in the chaos. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said he was dead, others that he'd abandoned the fight. The lower ranks fractured into small groups, each with their own ideas of who to trust and how to fight back. And the girl? She lingered near the edge of camp, silent, watching, her eyes unreadable pools of something ancient and hungry. Some hunters wanted her dead. Others whispered about bargaining with her. I couldn't decide what terrified me more, her, or what she might reveal about the traitor still walking among us. Seelan shook his head, breaking my thoughts. "We can't fight like this. We need a plan. We need to find Isrin." I nodded. The night was alive with distant howls and the rustle of something moving just beyond the firelight. We were not alone. And in the cold, the war for the Dawnguard's soul had only just begun. The forest seemed to close in tighter with every step. Seelan and I moved quietly, every snapped twig and shifting shadow setting our nerves on edge. The ash trail from the crypt was fading, but whispers of Isrin's fate kept pulling us forward. "He's alive," I said, more to convince myself than Seelan. Seelan didn't respond at first, eyes scanning the blackened trunks. "If he is, he's not alone. The traitor's reach is longer than we feared." We reached a clearing, and there it was, a crude campfire, cold but not forgotten. Scattered around were marks of a struggle, broken arrows, scorched earth, and faint blood trails. Then, a rustle. I raised my crossbow as a figure stepped into the firelight. Isrin, gaunt but fierce, face hardened by loss. His eyes burned with the same cold fire I remembered. "You're late," he growled, ignoring the questions burning in my mind. "We lost Dayspring," I said, voice tight. "The traitor, he's inside the Dawnguard." Isrin's jaw clenched. "Then the war is closer than we thought. We need to root out the rot before it spreads." His gaze flicked over to the girl, who had silently appeared behind us. Her eyes held his for a long, tense moment. "She's key," he said finally. "To the cure or the end." As the wind howled through the trees, I realized the line between hunter and hunted had blurred. The forest wasn't just hiding enemies, it was hiding truths none of us were ready to face. The flicker of torchlight danced against the ancient stone walls of the abandoned ruin we'd taken refuge in. Isrin's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned a faded manuscript spread on the cracked table before him. "This," he said, tracing a symbol with a finger stained by ink and dirt, "is the key to the plague in our midst." Seelan leaned in, voice low. "The blood curse from the crypt?" Isrin nodded grimly. "It's older than any vampire legend we've chased, an ancient sickness that corrupts the blood itself, turning hunters into monsters." The girl stood silently, watching, her pale fingers brushing a silver pendant around her neck, a pendant carved with the same runes on the crypt's stair. "I can help," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But it will come at a price." Isrin's gaze hardened. "What price?" She looked at Seelan and me in turn. "To fight the darkness, sometimes you must become a part of it." The fire crackled, throwing long shadows across the room as silence fell. In the flickering gloom, I realized that the Dawnguard's fight was no longer black and white. The line between savior and monster had blurred, and the cost of victory might be the very souls we swore to protect. The fire's glow flickered in the darkened chamber as the girl knelt beside a crude basin, her hands moving deftly over a small silver knife. Seelan and I watched in silence, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on us like a winter storm. "Why should we trust you?" I asked, breaking the heavy quiet. Her eyes met mine, steady and unwavering. "Because I have no other choice." With a swift motion, she cut her palm, letting blood drip into the basin. The liquid shimmered, glowing faintly under the torchlight. Isrin leaned forward, voice grim. "This is the ritual, the binding. If it succeeds, she will gain the strength to fight the curse from within. But if it fails..." Seelan's words hung in the air, unfinished and terrifying. She smiled, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "Then I will become what you fear most." The ceremony began, ancient words rolling off her tongue like a dark melody. The air thickened, and shadows seemed to pulse with life around us. When it was done, a new silence fell, heavier than before. Isrin stood, breaking the spell. "We've made a pact with darkness. Now we fight not just for survival, but for redemption." Outside, the wind howled, a reminder that the war was far from over, and the true enemy was still lurking in the night. Dawn broke cold and unforgiving, casting pale light over the ragged remnants of the Dawnguard. The camp stirred with a restless energy, whispers of hope mingled uneasily with the weight of loss. Isrin stood before us, his voice raw but resolute. "We may be fewer, but we are not broken. The darkness has claws, yes, but we have new weapons now. And we fight not just for Skyrim, but for our very souls." The girl, now standing tall and fierce, caught my eye. Her presence was unsettling, a living reminder of the line we had crossed. We set out, each step measured, every shadow a potential enemy. The forest around us seemed more alive than ever, a web of secrets, and danger spun thick with silent watchers. Seelan beside me, his crossbow loaded and eyes sharp. "It's not just the vampires we need to fear anymore," he murmured. "It's what we're becoming." I nodded, feeling the weight of the blood binding us all, hunter and hunted alike. As we moved deeper into the wilderness, the horizon darkened, the night stretching out before us like a maw ready to swallow everything whole. The hunt was far from over. The forest grew darker as twilight bled into night, shadows lengthening like fingers reaching for the sky. Our small band pressed forward, every step a calculated risk, every breath a prayer against the cold biting at our bones. Isrin moved ahead, silent and grim, the girl's glowing eyes scanning the darkness. Seelan and I flanked them, crossbows ready, hearts pounding in the eerie stillness. Suddenly, a cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sound that stopped us all. A low, guttural chant. From the depths of the forest, figures emerged, cloaked and twisted, their faces obscured beneath hoods dripping with shadows. The trader's voice cut through the gloom, calm and cruel. "You cannot hide from the darkness you've embraced." The girl stepped forward, voice steady but filled with steel. "We fight it together, or we fall divided." The chanting grew louder, shadows coiling and writhing as unseen creatures stirred in the underbrush. And then, from the darkness, a pair of eyes glowed brighter than any fire, crimson and cold, fixing on me with a hunger that chilled my soul. The night exploded. Thanks for sticking around and diving into this dark and twisted tale of the Dawnguard with me. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Totally Accurate for more epic Skyrim adventures and lore deep dives. What do you think will happen next? Will the Dawnguard survive the shadows rising from within? Drop your theories and thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. Until next time, stay sharp, keep your crossbow ready, and remember, sometimes the real monsters are the ones hiding in plain sight. See you in the next video and good night.